Hello, everyone. My name is My Luu, and I am beyond excited that everyone took time out of their days to be here, to be part of this spicy conversation. So if you're looking for a basic conversation about future work, you should probably step out because this will not be that. So I serve currently as the Chief Impact Officer and co-founder of LifeSpark Labs. We are a science-backed video game that helps young adults discover their career paths and build the skills that employers are looking for. That's my day job. My volunteer job that I do is serving as our head of process and culture at the AI Collective. And they are the wonderful sponsors of this event. And so who we are is a grassroots organization of over 70,000 members globally. And we are a fully volunteer nonprofit. And we're really focused on being at the frontier of what's about to happen with humanity. So there are many times in history where there's been a huge influx of the possibilities of the world, and we are at one of them. Lucky us, because if we think about the frontier of human progress, it's progressing through time at a certain pace, but now with the introduction of generative AI and all the agentic opportunities available, we are now at this opportunity where the influx is limitless for us. And so we are on this new frontier of being able to see what is possible for us. And so we get to decide what that frontier looks like and this unique position in history. So go us. And so, as I mentioned, we're a global movement with starting in 2023 in San Francisco, and with over 70,000 members worldwide and chapters and growing. And this is more than just a movement. We have representation across multiple different organizations that are also thought leaders in this space. So we definitely don't want to do this alone, and we have tons of partners that are helping along on this journey. And so really our mission tonight and at any AI Collective event that you go to is to be able to exchange insights with each other, really deepen the understanding of each other, who we are as humans, and foster connection. And then really use that information to drive collective progress together as a humanity. We went through that really quickly. And so with that said, what this means for you, each of you took time out of your busy days to be here, also voluntarily on your own. And so this really means an opportunity for each of you. We welcome everyone into the collective. It's for us, by us. And so if you're interested in being part of what's shaping the future of AI and doing it for the betterment of humanity and connection, you're part of the collective. So with that said, I'd love to introduce another group of amazing collectives. My fellow panelists onto the stage, please. Amazing. And while they're getting situated, we're going to do a quick poll. So you just got here, but please pick out your phones. And you all knew that the title of this event was called Who Will Decide the Future of Work? So let's find out. If you want to take your phone and scan that QR code, okay, we'll take a couple seconds. Who do you think will decide the future of work? So I'll give you a couple seconds and then let the responses load in, but give you all. So we'll go ahead and do a quick intro to the panelists. And Fatima, you are to my left. I'll start with you first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fatima Hassan, currently a student at UC Berkeley studying electrical engineering and computer science. I'm currently building Fatima's Guide, which is a platform dedicated to creating videos to help high school and college students land internships, pay for college, find extracurriculars, and overall help them with their academic and early careers. I've been building that for the past couple of months now, have reached 200 million views across different platforms, 170,000 followers, and 50 million accounts reached. And I've partnered with companies such as Adobe, Notion, Microsoft, and a bunch more. And now I'm building a mentorship program that connects these ambitious high schoolers to really cracked college students, and that's been going really well so far. Back in high school, I also built a bunch of different apps, such as a blackjack app to teach beginners how to play blackjack, as well as an AI-powered fitness tool that helps improve home workouts using computer vision that was featured in Fox News. And in the summer, I spent my entire 3 months in SF, along with 7 other female founders at Founder House, which is the world's first all-female hacker house, and we were featured in the New York Times as well as USA Today. So that was a really fun experience, and I'm super excited to be here and share my insights with you all.
I told y'all the panel was going to be badass.
Wow, that is a tough act to follow, sister. That is amazing. Well done. Lori Castillo-Martinez. I am a global executive. I work at the intersection of AI and talent. So most recently was at Salesforce, leading their workforce innovation and performance team, really thinking about the future of work and the transformation that all Fortune 500 companies and many new companies are going through to build their talent for the future.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lonnie Mahanta. I'm currently the Chief Legal and Corporate Affairs Officer at a company called HopSkipDrive. But right before that, I was at a nonprofit called the AI Education Project. Salesforce.org was a major sponsor of ours, so nice. Spent a lot of time with the Salesforce team. We partner with school districts on AI literacy for teachers and students, and thinking also about AI as it impacts entire school systems. Before that, I was also the VP of the Future of Work at Lyft way back when. We were focused on thinking about how independent work is changing individuals' economic lives. I think a lot of connection to the conversation that we have today. Also a non-resident fellow at the Brookings Institution where I focus on the future of work.
Very cool. Good evening, everyone. I'm Wen, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of GenSpark AI. We are a Palo Alto-based technology company, and we build AI agents for knowledge workers. Essentially, many people out there say, oh, AI is coming, knowledge workers are going to lose their jobs. We simply don't see the world that way at all. Our belief is human potential is going to be unleashed, and we're all going to be elevated in a way that we're going to all work like a boss. AI is going to run around and then do grunt work for us. We launched our super agent back in April, and last week we broke $50 million of ARR. Before that, I was an automotive engineer by training, and after that, built my first company after graduating from grad school, and sold that company in 22.
Badasses, all of them. So let's calibrate the playing field here, because we have different voices in the room. Some are students, some are HR leaders, some are L&D leaders, some are founders, some are investors. Some are academia, and so I wanted just to level set. There's this concept called the Great Detachment that's happening, and that's really this concept that with so much that's going on in the workplace, we are seeing the early declines that are continuing in employee engagement. So right now, this is the second decline in engagement that's been sustained. The first one was during the COVID pandemic. No surprise, pretty tough time to be working. And now we're seeing the second. So you see a sloping decline on engagement. At the same time, on the right side, you see this rapid increase in acceleration of technology. So I'm not a math major, but if one slope is going down while the other slope is going up, that doesn't seem correlated or sustainable. So how is it possible to have a disengaged workforce, but also an increased amount of technology that is expected for this workforce to be adopted? So with that context panel, this is going to be a spicy conversation because we have to talk about that human experience alongside technological advancements. So the first question I have is for the panel. You know, we hear this term future of work a lot. Sounds very buzzwordy. What does that actually mean to you personally? Not just as a role or the titles that you've held, but as a human living through this shift.
I'll give it a step. So for me, I don't write my emails anymore. So every morning, coming into the office, I just ask GenSpark Super Agent, hey, scan through my inbox, tell me what's going on, and draft responses for my top 5 priorities. I'll proofread it. I still have to take human responsibilities, but AI does 80-90% of work, and we human beings really just give it the final touch, and with that, I gain a lot more time, right? So goes with preparing for a client meeting. The first 15 minutes for me is always panic. I have no clue like what's going on, but then now I just ask GenSpark to do research about this client in 3 minutes, lay out all the, actionables, things don't say, things you should say, and so on and so forth. It's amazing. So my view is the future is now. And for a lot of folks who are jumping onto some of the bleeding edge AI tools, I'd say they're probably already benefiting a lot from, gaining a lot more time on their hands and making money. I was in Nashville last week and for this startup conference, and I met some of our power users. One of them basically was essentially selling websites for thousands of dollars to his clients. Before he would hire, offshore developers, and then he would pay them thousands of dollars. But now it's like $25 for GenSpark, and then that's it. He just makes all the margin. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of future is now, and take advantage of AI, and we all get elevated. You make more money, you gain more time. 3-day work week is what we want for everybody. Yeah, vibe working.
Thanks, Quinn. It sounds like it means being able to take back time in your life. Okay. Any other thoughts?
For me, I'll take this answer in a very different direction. For me, I think a lot about this through the lens of my kids and what world we are rapidly kind of throwing at them and what they are heading into. My kids are in elementary school and middle school. The disruption that we're seeing already in the education space is massive. The way we think about learning outcomes, pedagogy, that is all going to have to change so very quickly in a school system in this country that does not change quickly. So we are forcing that on our kids, teachers that are unprepared. How are we going to navigate that? And then putting kids into a workforce that is also going to be rapidly, very, very different from what we're seeing right now. So none of the ways in which we currently think about preparing our young people for the future, I think are really going to do that. So there's somebody who spent a lot of time thinking about this, and people ask me, well, what should my kids do? What should my kids study? I really don't have an answer for that. And that's a very scary place for me, but I also know that the thing I tell parents, the best option for us right now is to be engaged, be curious, and help your kids navigate as you are doing yourself. The theme of this conversation is curiosity from my perspective, but to me that's what I think about when I think about the future of work. How do we prepare a world for kids where there is both stability, dignity, and purpose?
Now that's great. I can build on that as well. So, we are really in a once in a generation change in terms of the workforce. And I absolutely agree. I think it is going to be very, very different. And so I try to think about it from the perspective of this is also a really amazing time to democratize careers. Because nobody really knows exactly, to your point, Lonnie, nobody knows what this is going to look like. It actually starts to open a lot of doors to people who maybe didn't feel like they had access or didn't feel like they had those same opportunities. What I'm seeing is, to your point, if people are able to engage, if they go out and seek with that curiosity, if they bring, again, sort of their human talent, exactly what you were saying, Wen, that sort of human talent to the table with the AI, I do think there is opportunity that people have not seen in decades to enter into new professions, new workforces, new areas. But I do think it does require, it's interesting that turn on individual versus businesses or corporations. I do think we all have to own our own employability and our own journey through this time. And so the opportunity is there, but we do have to take it. And we do have to jump in with 2 feet, and that can be very daunting. And I guess there's also very different feelings about it. I'll just say I was talking to my 23-year-old son, so maybe Fatima, you'll jump into some of this as well. And he said, "Mom, you realize you're supporting an environmental tool, weapon of mass destruction. Are you sure this is really what you want to do with AI? Like, are you thinking about the world? Are you thinking about the climate?" And so, anyways, he made it spicy for me as well. Added a new point of view.
Thank you. Fatima, any comments to that?
Yeah, I'd love to add on. Especially I feel like being a student, I'm immersed with just everyone using AI. So one specific example is like, I have a lot of friends who are CS majors who complain about like the job market and not being able to find jobs. And then I have a lot of friends who are like building startups and they've raised like $6-7 million. And they're like, I have issues finding like a really competent engineer. And so there's jobs, but it's like, these kids aren't able to land these jobs because they're so reliant on AI to do like their CS homework or like cheat on interviews where it's like, okay, first day on the job, they don't actually know what they're doing because they're so reliant on AI. And I feel like because of that, there's this huge knowledge gap of like, okay, these kids know how to utilize AI, but it's like, can they actually use it to expand the knowledge that they have in their brain versus just fully being reliant on it? And because of that, they have no critical thinking of their own, which I think is really, really interesting. And I'm curious to see how that kind of ends up playing down the line. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I see a lot of nods in the audience. It kind of brings me to the next question around this tension that kind of arises between maybe what you see right now that employers are wanting from employees, especially ones that are early grads or early hires. I'd love to know, what is the biggest tension that you see right now when you think about what employers want and what employees need? What's the biggest tension between what employers want and what do employees need right now?
What I'm seeing, so I'm just started in a new company, and so it's like a great opportunity to kind of see how a specific firm is navigating AI adoption, especially in a non-AI native company, a company that's been around for a little while. And the thing that has been the most glaring tension is that very clear direction from the top around AI adoption, clear guidance, AI governance, policies, tools, all of that is there. But then how employees actually use it is so function specific and ultimately individual specific. And so across the teams, there's such a wide variety of like who's adopting, who's using, deeply integrating into workflows and who's not. And so like it ends up becoming this, how do you get individuals to figure out what are the right ways to use these tools in their own specific area? And that's not something that like a policy or just a mandate addresses. And the thing that I see, mentioned this earlier, is that what appears to be is so much comes down to individual curiosity. Those individuals that are themselves interested or are playing around in their own lives, and they're the ones who are figuring out how to figure out what AI in a finance team, AI in legal, AI in customers, they're the ones that are figuring it out. What happens to those other folks, though? That tension is like coming really quickly, very fast right now.
Yeah, I think it's, what I'm seeing is that a lot of companies are, to your point, they're throwing out mandates, and maybe they're clear that they want people to use AI, but the best use cases is when you're using AI that's fit for purpose for what you're trying to do. And I think that's the missing piece that so many companies have not done, is actually decided, how am I going to redesign work? We know that all of us, every research study, or so many of them that have been out, I think one of the ones in the last 6 months was around from World Economic Forum, 30% of our work is going to change. Regardless, we do nothing, our jobs are going to change just by nature of what's going to be available in all of our jobs. And so when you think about the skilling that's required, it's actually going to require a redesign of jobs. And then all of us are going to have to figure out then, how do you deploy that AI that's fit for purpose for what you're trying to achieve? And you don't have the sort of generic, just go figure it out, but something, when you were talking about the emails, like that's a very particular use case that your agent, it sounds excellent for. There are other agents out there that are getting deployed in companies that aren't necessarily fit for purpose for what they're trying to do. And in those cases, I talked to many of our engineers who, similar to your perspective, they're like, this is not helpful to me. Why are you deploying an agent that's not actually going to help? And we saw the difference. We deployed one that actually was not fit for purpose, and we had something like a 37% adoption. People who followed the rules, I called them, who just used it, even though it actually made them less productive. And then we had a tool that was excellent and really was fit for purpose. And we saw 93% usage of that tool. And again, when you go back and talk to people and they say, well, it's actually amazing. Like, I want to use this tool. It actually complements what I'm trying to get done. And I think that's the thing that we're missing, is nobody's having that more specific conversation.
So to that, I talked to some of the corporate folks who reached out to us. We launched it as an individual tool back in April. And then within about 45 days, we had about 2 million users signed up. And then all of a sudden, corporate folks started to reach out. And I asked them, okay, how did you discover us? Why are you talking to us? And essentially, there are kind of the two voices in the corporate world from our observation. One is a lot of the leadership team, they get this pressure from the boardroom. So the board members are like, everybody's using AI. What are you using AI for? Get me more earnings, get me more profit. Yeah. And the leadership would then scramble, like, okay, what do we do? What do we do? Let's go out and then talk to every AI company, and then let's see what we can do. So that's one kind of streak of voices. Another group would be essentially individuals used something they really like a lot of our users. They become power users. They use us to produce presentations, build financial models, write an investment memo, build a podcast, or just a complete software application with our AI developer. And then they would be like, oh, I could do so much individually with my, just by myself. Like, what if our company could just pay for this? Wouldn't my life be a lot better? So, I mean, if you kind of listen to both of these voices, and then eventually they push it to the leadership and IT team, it comes down to one thing. Everybody wants more. The employers want more. They want to get more done. They want more earnings. The employees want, but they want more time. They want less busy work. They want more me time, right? So my view is when it comes to this, really, the way we could leverage off the latest, AI breakthroughs is that, to the panel's point, right? Like, use AI for the right things, do the right tasks. At the same time, I'd say, yeah, the goals for everybody is actually aligned. It's not necessarily just kind of, oh, we're completely in conflict. I think AI actually provides that opportunity for everybody to achieve more, including both the employers and employees, if it is done right. Yeah.
Amazing. Fatima, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, they pretty much nailed it.
Cool. Wen, I did want to give you the floor. So we're gracious to have Wen join us for this first part of the panel. And unfortunately, he does have to step out, but I wanted to give him the opportunity to share any final thoughts or anything that you want to make sure that this group walks away with from your wisdom.
I appreciate I don't know that I have much of wisdom per se, but really, can I quickly ask, how many founders are in the audience? Amazing. How about investors? Okay. And
They never raised their hand for that one.
So can you guys just shout out, like, what do you do in general? Like, for work, for a living?
Product management.
Amazing. Product managers? Anyone? Project managers? Event. Amazing. Okay. So, I mean, the way at GenSpark we look at the world is why we build what we build, AI agents for knowledge workers, is what I said earlier. Like, there are a lot of voices out there saying that AI is coming, we're going to lose our jobs. Absolutely not. I mean, I gave this analogy, like, in our last AI Collective event. Like, today, nobody washed their laundry by hand, right? Who does that? We got laundry machines. But if you live 1,000 years ago, unless you're a feudal lord or a super rich, you will have to do it by hands. This is how human civilization progresses, right? Like, AI is here. It's going to help us to do all the grunt work. So what we do is we put a fleet of Goldman Sachs analysts in your pocket. You wanted to build a presentation, you ask GenSpark Super Agent to basically do the research for you, build a financial model, and then our Super Agent is going to call on some of the leading edge models from, for example, Claude, to write code in HTML to render those slides. You can't build those beautiful slides with human hands, actually. And then you just tell the AI agent what you want, what you don't want, and what the agent did well and what it didn't. And then, yeah, voila, you have your work product. The shift in our mind is how work is going to be done. But at the end, human beings take responsibility. What I mean by that is, in the past, we would pay for tools like Microsoft 365, Google Suite, Slack, Notion, Salesforce, you name it. And then we would do work, word by word, pixel by pixel, hands-on, as human beings. Now, with tools like, GenSpark Super Agent, what changes is we don't have to apply ourselves most immediately to any task anymore. We ask the Super Agent to do it. AI does 60, 70, 80, 90% of it. It's not perfect, that's for sure, at least not right now. But what that gives us is we all get elevated to be focused on the high value, high leverage tasks. We all just focus on rather strategic stuff. We use our best deep expertise in certain area versus I have to figure out, okay, where do I put this picture? How do I word this thing? None of that anymore. So yeah, I'd say for anyone who wants to, take pictures, share on social, and tag GenSpark and AI Collective today and our panelists, 2,000 free credits for you on LinkedIn or X. Try it out. Yeah. We just wanted to create these opportunities for everybody to benefit from it. A lot of people make money off our platform, and we're happy to see that. And we want more knowledge workers to essentially just, have more free time on your hands. And you can decide to do more and then accomplish more. You can also decide to pull back and then just relax. Your call. Yeah.
Thanks, Wen.
Thank you.
All right, everyone give a round of applause for Wen.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, there was a quick question, Wen, if you have a time for one. One question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you disrupted the product launch because we used to hear that launch one product, test it, and then grow slowly. But you made a total different change. You launched many tools. So how do you balance your ambition of different product tools versus the quality of each tool to make sure that the user is satisfied with it? Thank you.
Absolutely, great question. So actually, quality matters. One thing we've learned, why we've had the fortune to have such great growth is because our month one retention is in between 88% and 92% in the past 3-4 months. So the reason we could achieve that is really that at the end, it's the balance between if I use this AI tool, do I spend more time going back and forth with the AI, or I actually, if I'm doing this by myself, like hands-on, I may save time. Then I don't need this AI tool, right? Unless it is like ready to go, it's production level work. Then I feel like, okay, I'll continue to pay for it. So the quality matters, and we focus on crafting that. But when it comes to releasing a product, so we've been on a streak to release new products on a weekly basis. There are two things underneath. One is the paradigm has shifted when it comes to building new things. The 80% of our code is written by AI. We are an AI native company. So human beings, we have amazing technology architects to essentially make sure the technology is built to scale. At the same time, we focus on product tastes. So back to your earlier point, how do kids kind of face the future? I'd say learn arts and get taste. And then also learn technology to get deep sense in how technologies actually work. But at the end of the day, what really helped us is, the cost of building new things is no longer that high. And our view is because things are happening so fast, the conventional Silicon Valley wisdom no longer is valid. Basically, before we say if something's working, forget about everything else, just focus on this one thing, double down, right? But if you do that, disruptors are getting disrupted all the time. I mean, think about code generation. Back in 22, everybody was talking about Copilot, and then it's Windsurf and Cursor. Now everybody's in Cloud Code. Who knows what's going to come out next, right? Codex, OpenAI just released Codex. So our view is it's not about the tools. It's about covering our business objectives. Everything else is means to an end. Our end is we want to accomplish those business goals as human beings, and AI doesn't matter like what human beings don't have to learn tools. We should just be able to speak our language and then see things, and then we should be able to get work done. And then AI just runs around to get the tools figured out, all integrations done, and yeah, that's kind of why we've been on this streak to release new products. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much, Wen, for your time.
Thank you. All right, have a good night.
Okay, so let's continue on with our badass panel, and I want to get a little bit more detailed and really get specific examples of how AI is really shaping the future of work. And so I'd wonder if you could each share a story where you've seen that work dramatically shift for someone, either positively or negatively, because of AI or automation or new ways of organizing. Could you share a story where there was a dramatic shift at work for someone, positively or negatively, because of AI, automation, or these new ways of organizing?
Yeah, I can start. I have a lot of friends who come from like non-technical backgrounds who are studying non-technical majors, and I think especially vibe coding has really helped them break into tech. So I can give a specific example. One of my friends, like she's looking for a job in like the linguistics department, and I was like, dude, you should make a personal website. And she's like, I have no idea how to code. And I was like, let me get you on. And then I told her about like how she can use Replit to start and deploy and build a website, all from just prompt engineering, just typing into plain English. And within like literally 10 prompts, she was able to build a really nice looking website that would have taken maybe months to build 5-6 years ago. And now she can just do it with no prior coding experience or coding background, and being able to deploy that and add it on her resume, like really shifted the amount of job applications that she got first round interviews in, for example. And so I think for the non-technical people especially, it has really helped them break into more technical fields and be able to code more apps and build more techie things. And I think that's really great to see. I hosted like a vibe coding hackathon in the past where most of the participants were high school and college students who had no experience in coding. And by the end of it, they were able to build and deploy an app and add it to their project and add it to their resume. And before that, they had never even written a line of code. So I think it's really interesting and really exciting to see this new wave that really anyone can just build an app. And the only programming language you really need to know for that is just English. Yeah.
Yeah, resurgence of English majors.
Liberal arts students, right? Liberal arts college.
I think so. Yeah, it's the critical thinking. And I guess what I would add is, really just what I've seen is, when agents first started coming out, we just deployed them like we deployed any other technology. And what we found is that it really changed the way people work. What they needed to do, what they needed to know, also how you manage the tools themselves. An agent isn't a set it and forget it. You've got to continually tune that agent and continue to give it knowledge. And what we also heard from our teams is that they didn't want to be beholden to the agent. So back to who decides, right? And so we deployed technology and took it everywhere we thought it was possible. And then we realized, our customers might not want to talk to an agent in this particular scenario. Our employees may not want to work with an agent in this particular scenario. And so I think the learning was really, again, being really intentional about where can you deploy agents in a way that expands your capacity, in ways that agents are really good and fit for purpose. Where do you have just regular automation? Because, there's so many opportunities that have not even, there's so much tech debt in so many companies that just has not, data is a whole other panel that's just, just not ready and ripe for some of this. And then where do you want to deploy your valuable human talent? Where do we need that critical thinking? Where do we need those folks who actually know how to code and understand the deep knowledge that it takes to make sure we have trusted AI, that it's being monitored, that it's being managed properly? And I think, again, our first learnings is that we weren't that intentional. We were sort of putting it out there. And, it's been over, the last months and year that we've really said, hold on a minute, we actually need to take a step back and be more thoughtful and intentional. And then, we need to be really clear with our employees and what they need and actually listen to them. What do they want? Where do they need agency to make some of those decisions to make, again, not only are they working more productively, but actually enjoying it a little bit more day to day.
I'll build off of what Fatima was saying a little bit. I think one of the things that has been really cool to see are people that I know that are deep domain experts in their industry, like 20-year comms veteran, a good friend of mine. He'd always seen this issue around how do you prove ROI on media mentions? What does that even mean? You're an in-house comms person, you're always trying to prove what your team is doing. He now is built, he's become an entrepreneur. He's vibe coding. Well, he now has hired an engineer, but he started off vibe coding and building a tool that he's now licensing to large companies for their comms teams to help figure out how to more effectively measure the impact of what a comms team is doing. Totally different area. My longtime hairstylist. He's been a mentor to stylists for forever. And he's seen the needs of like a new small business owner in this one little niche industry. He's using AI, himself vibe coding, building out a tool to help new owners sort of build. I have like lots of these examples of this, like really this creation of this opportunity for entrepreneurial endeavor that really was quite hard, or, perhaps impossible before, and for people that are non-technical and never saw themselves in this area. And I will also contradict myself here and say that I think that a lot of people in this ecosystem, all of us here, we talk about how entrepreneurialism is going to be the solve to workforce disruption. And I think that that's way undercounting the impact of what it would actually mean for most people's lives, or a lot of people's lives. There is some level of a safety net, privilege, opportunity that you can do to go down an entrepreneurial path. For a lot of people, they either don't have the wherewithal or have a lot of other just basic bills and life needs that don't allow for, I'm just going to become self-employed and start my own business. That's going to be the solve for this. So I find that answer to be a little bit pat. I also think that there's this piece here where we're talking about, yes, technology has always disrupted jobs. That is undoubtedly true. But the pace of this change is so fast that I really worry about this interim period. Yes, there will be some equilibrium down the road, but what happens in the middle when firms are pushing to be like, the thing that used to need 4 people now only needs 1 person? You're not going to rehire those 3 people. They get let go, or you have some downsizing, market goes down a little bit. I mean, these are also just financial realities that companies are facing that impacts real people's lives. Do we expect all of those people to just go and start their own companies with all the risks that that entails? I don't know. That feels complicated to me.
Spicy, right? So the answer isn't everyone gets to be an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is a privilege. To be able to be your own business owner and to have your own company, it's hard. It's a ton of work. You need that support system, and not all of us have that privilege of support around us all the time. So I'm gonna go off script a little bit. So then if, for those of us who might be navigating the career changing and the expectations, or the things at work where I'm supposed to do more with less, but I'm already burnt out before all this stuff that was put on me. That was a theme that I saw a lot in the RSVPs for this event. Is like, I'm trying to figure out this ish at work. What would be your perspectives on people who are in this messy middle right now of companies wanting to do more? We're not quite sure what that more means, but we are feeling that impact. Any thoughts or advice on people in this room that are navigating that dissonance right now? Spicy.
Yeah, I'm obviously a bit like younger than most people here. But I would say it's always good to have a side hustle. Like, I have a lot of my friends, like, sure, they have like internships that they're doing throughout the summer, but a lot of them, especially those that are founders building their own companies, they're all doing like 30-day series of making YouTube videos of like, follow my journey as a founder and blah, 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 whatever. And then I have a lot of other friends that are selling, like, for example, their college essays for like 15, 20 bucks, and then they're making like, 10K per month, and that's just like a side hustle, and that's fully passive income. So there's like so many different ways that you could do like a plethora. I mean, obviously these are more like college specific.
Any academia in the room, cover your ears. La, 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 la.
For inspiration, obviously, nothing more than that. But that being said, I feel like that's just like a blueprint. Like, you can kind of apply that to anything. Yeah, I mean, also another thing would be like, for example, I'm trying to get my brother to do like marketing and like consulting for like small businesses where he could like build and deploy a website for them. So that's always like a cool thing. Like, people are always in need of, more technical assistance or technical help in those different fields and regards. So that kind of ties into what I mean by like side hustles. I think it's always good to have something on the side, just some like few grand a month that could always help you. And I think it's just always really fun. And for me, I look at it as more of a creative outlet than anything else. I just find it really fun and enjoyable. And I feel like I consider everything that I'm doing to be a side hustle. I don't like thinking of like things as jobs and like full-time things. That word scares me. But yeah, that's what I would recommend to honestly anyone of any age.
Yeah, I think in many companies, look, if the company culture isn't for you, find the one that is. So that's just one thing I'd say, regardless of what time we're in. And the AI aside, you shouldn't be working for a company where your values and it just doesn't align. But I guess what I've seen is in many companies, there are places where employers are looking for people who are curious and willing to be early adopters and willing to lean into this space. And what I've seen is when people are willing to raise their hands, it actually gets them sometimes out of where they might be feeling that dead end, burnt out space and into something new and different. I was part of an organization that, we ended up creating something like 5,000 new jobs. New profiles, new roles, didn't exist before, newly constituted jobs. And honestly, there wasn't really anybody that we were going to find outside of the company that was qualified for those jobs. And so what we really needed were people who knew the customers, who knew the products, who knew the culture of the company, and people who were willing to take some risk inside of the organization they were already a part of. We also needed managers. For those of you who are managers or people leaders in your organizations, if you're managing a team, you owe them the opportunity to go seek out other opportunities. I think one of the biggest barriers I saw was people who were afraid. They were totally miserable in their job, but afraid to upset their manager. Or their manager was hoarding talent, as we say, and not being willing to let their teams go. And to me, it wasn't the technology that was creating the barriers. It was actually the humans in the organization that were creating the barriers, which was just, again, time and time again, it's not been the technology, it's really been the people. And so having those open and honest conversations with teams, and if you're a leader, you have a real opportunity to change your culture and change the attitudes. In every survey we ran inside of a 77,000 person company, every time the manager is the one person who made the biggest difference to whether someone got the training they needed, was able to go find that new opportunity, or felt like they could, or had that empowerment to jump. And again, if it's not in the right place, start looking. I always say, sort of own your own employability, lead or be led. Sort of now is the time for all of us to have our own agency and decide who we want to be in this opportunity, because most of the time, nobody really knows how to do so many of these roles. And many of us have the skills that we already need to do them. Part of this is making that jump and taking some of those risks. And maybe it's not as safe as staying where you are. But to Lonnie's point, it may be, more advantageous than waiting for it to happen and having to figure it out.
Okay, great. One last question, and then we're going to make this a little bit interactive and increase the spice. Who do you think is being left out of these future work conversations right now? And what's at stake if they're not included? Who's being left out of these future work conversations? And what's at stake if they're not included? So maybe you can start with who's in these conversations usually when we talk about future work.
I guess I'm building a little bit on some of the previous part of this conversation where there are the folks who are sort of at the forefront, the folks who are leaning in, who are driving, and that's from an individual perspective, but also from a firm level. The thing that I worry about who are leaving out of this conversation are those that are, do we just assume that adoption of technological change and constant technological change is something that everybody must be on board with in order to kind of stay employed in our current economy? So for those people, perhaps those are out of the Bay Area, like my family in Missouri or wherever, we're not talking about AI as much in those other places as we are here. And yet those same pressures are going to come to bear on them as well in those communities. And healthy communities across the country is important for all of us, right? So that it is sort of, I think, those people that for whom this rapid change is kind of being foisted upon them. That to me is they're not part of this conversation at all. They're nowhere near what we're talking about here, which right now is boards, companies, firms, managers, and then the individuals right now. And in tech companies, we're all probably talking about it, but there's a whole host of other employees who are going to be impacted who are not part of this conversation.
Any other thoughts, panelists?
Yeah, that's a great point. So when I was living in the Hacker House over the summer, one of my roommates, she was from Minnesota, and she was telling me about how so many people back in her high school and college didn't even know what cursor was, and I was like, wait, what? That's crazy. And I realized that, dang, we live in such a tech bubble, especially SF, the Bay Area, having spent the past 3 months in SF. Obviously these are words that are just commonly exchanged in regular conversations, but the moment you use these sort of jargons outside of the Bay Area or to people who are very new in tech or just beginner incoming CS students are what are you even talking about? And I feel in those sort of instances we are very far ahead and advanced in the way that we are kind of utilizing these different AI tools and adopting them into like our different workflows in comparison to these people who might not be that used to AI or, you know, be surrounded in those sort of conversations, especially younger professionals and younger like college students who may not have heard of all these different tools and, you know, get more immersed in it in comparison to like maybe Stanford or Berkeley students who hear these types of words and workflows being utilized all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, how do you think about fundamental representation, right? Frontline workers, in addition to knowledge workers, they'll be impacted just the same. Every time I get in an Uber or a taxi, I ask them how they use AI, and no matter where I am around the world, and it's very interesting, the answers I get. Some are really savvy. Oh, this is what I do when I'm waiting for a fare. I started talking to Claude. And other folks are like, oh, yeah, this is my second job, driving an Uber. My first job is I work at Amazon in a distribution center. And, they're starting to figure out how can we do this or that with AI. And I only know because I'm a manager, but I think about all my teams and all my workers and what's going to happen to them when all the robots get deployed inside of an Amazon distribution center. And so it is interesting to get those different perspectives. And I do think we are very different space. I mean, even between here and Los Angeles, it's very different in terms of points of view. And so I think, part of our obligation, I love what you were saying about AI Collective earlier, because I think we need more groups like that to have more conversations to make sure that there's representation in the tools that are being built. There's representation in access and usage. And we haven't gotten back to the topic of education, but I worry about that as much as you were talking about, because I just don't think the systems are moving fast enough for our kids to keep up with the technology.
I double down on who's being left out of the room. For me, and why I started LifeSpark Labs with my co-founder, Amber, who's sitting in the front audience. Shout out to Amber. Hello. Is really thinking about our young adults, like our future pipeline, our future leaders, and how they're in this messy middle as we adults try to figure this out. And if we can't figure it out, how are we expecting these young folks who are still figuring themselves out to navigate this system ahead of us? And so it's our responsibility as adults of this current generation to bring the future generations along on this journey and to support them through this experience, because it's messy and we have to acknowledge that. And so we have to do things in a different way to prepare our young adults for the future. Lonnie would love to double down on your background in education here, and where, if you were to give advice for parents in the room, and as we're thinking about the need for upskilling our young adults for the future, any thoughts that you'd want to share in that space from an education perspective?
Yeah, we touched on it, but critical thinking is really the key piece of this entire puzzle. Somebody once asked me, why are you bothering to go work on like AI in education? And students are going to learn these tools like far faster than any you old people, right? And that is undoubtedly true, right? These are going to be native tools for my kids in a way that they're not for me. However, the thing that the response that I have for that question is when you give a kid a homework assignment, and you give them a tool that is the possibility to just answer it straight away, right? Give them the answer. You're obviously bypassing that learning outcome that you are hoping for. The intermediate step is to sort of help at least some kids understand that there are ways to use these tools that are additive, that are not bypassing the learning process, and that are still utilizing their critical thinking and also building on these other whole suite of human skills, human-centered skills, skills in the human advantage, communication, collaboration. So all of that piece we need to do. And then there's a sort of a longer term, which is at some point that piece of homework needs to change, right? And we need to recognize that like these tools do exist, toothpaste not going back in the tube. How do we actually think about what we're trying to accomplish with that essay and then redesign our academic program so that we're actually getting to those outcomes? That's the much harder problem. The intermediate problem, I think, right now is to think about AI literacy, AI readiness, and then fostering that, all those other skills that are non-technical. And we all sort of touched on that. But again, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, these are not new concepts in the education space, right? Every teacher is an administrator and policy person has been talking about those things for a long time. Now might be the moment to perhaps kind of push that more to the fore, maybe, we'll see.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to transition to the game part of the conversation. And so we're going to move our arms around a little bit. And so we're going to play a game called Signal or Noise. Signal or noise. So signal is something that is going to be enduring. It's going to be something that's not just a trend. It's not just hype, but actually this is going to be a signal. This is an indicator of something more long term. Noise is something that is going to be just a temporary thing. It's just just hype, temporary, just not really not an indicator of something big or sustainable that will happen. So the panelists don't even know what we're going to talk about. So we're going to play signal and noise. So I'm going to ask. The way this will work is I'll say, for those of you who think signal, raise your hand. Everyone raise your hand. Hands down. Everything resets. Those of you that think it's a noise, raise your hand. So we'll do that for each of these statements. And these are going to be statements that have been headlines in some of the articles that you might have been reading. The first one, AI is going to take over my job. Signal or noise? So raise your hand if you think signal. No pressure. Okay, noise, for those of you noise. Okay. Any brave souls who want to say why they said noise or signal?
I think the amount of critical thinking necessary to take over a lot of jobs, especially knowledge work, but anything where you need complex, rational decision making on a regular basis needs AGI, and we're so far away from that point. I can't even get all the way through a strategy discussion with Claude without hitting a context window. How is it going to replace my job? I think it's a rational reaction, a rational fear. And it's definitely something to keep in mind as we're moving through this space and we're seeing the evolution of these tools and how we integrate them into our daily lives. But I think we're a long way away from it becoming something that really needs to be seriously considered in terms of disrupting the nature of how people actually go about doing things.
Great. Anyone brave to say noise? Who was a noise person? There's no judgment in the room.
So I think AI replacing people's work would be a noise because I think AI would be the tool that we need to rescale our humans' capability or ability, or in the end, people will find another place that we are more better on, rather than have AI do the replicated works instead of people doing that. So I think it would be a rescaling thing rather than a replacement.
Okay. Final thoughts from the panel. Signal or noise?
I would say it's noise because, what she said, honestly.
Same.
Nice. Same. Okay. All right. There is an increasing amount of overemployment. Overemployment defined as individuals who have more than one full-time job. There's an increase of people who are overemployed, people who have more than one full-time job. Raise your hand if you think that is a signal. Sustainable. It's a sustainable thing that's going to keep going on.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone think it's noise? A couple noise? A couple signals? Anyone brave to say signal that wants to share why they said signal? That this is going to be something that's enduring, that's not going to stop, it's going to keep going? Ruben?
Thank you. I think, and this is not my original idea, it comes from an investor called Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Some people probably are. He's from the Bay. And something he mentioned a few years ago, this was back in 2020, on a podcast where he said that the future of work is going to be basically you wake up in the morning, you look at your phone, and there'll be projects. And you pick and choose what projects you want to work on, and you obviously they'll have a pay to it, and people will you'll bet on it and whatever, and then, you take the lowest offer, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's kind of scary because it makes you be everyone's a freelancer now. So what is it going to look like when it comes to benefits? What is it going to look like with everything else? And they do talk about it on the podcast, and that's a whole nother thing. But that's how I see, like, I know people who have been overemployed, you know, software engineers, customer success managers, like all these people. And I'm like, oh, you're working 2 jobs because like you could do your job in 2-3 hours. And you're like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to do this one now. So I'm seeing it a lot more personally. But also as I think about the future of work, I'm like, maybe, you know, 40-hour work weeks won't exist. And we could kind of do what we want and make as much as we want, depending on the opportunities we look for. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for Signal. Anyone think that overemployment is noise? It's just temporary, it's gonna die out. That's a fad.
Can I say? I wish I live in that world where I can see the tasks and pick it up. I think that during the COVID, it happened. Everybody was working remote, doing 2-3 jobs. And maybe that was a signal for corporations to require them come back to office so we see what you do. And with thousands of layoffs for the last 2-3 years after COVID, I don't think that this is that possible. Maybe only people who have really good technical skills in AI, they do extra side hustle, as Fatima said, but overemployed to me is noise.
Panelists, overemployment, signal or noise? Any comments from you?
I was actually thinking about it slightly differently around just the cost of living in the Bay Area. And there are so many people that work multiple jobs to live in this beautiful place, but very expensive place.
Saw a lot of nods, yeah. Yeah, this bubble is expensive, y'all. Yeah. Okay. An alarming rate of women over the age of 20 have left the workforce this year, with labor participation low of 58.4%. An alarming amount of women over the age of 20 have left the workforce this year with a labor participation rate at a low of 58%. Is that going to be sustained? It's a sign that this is going to be continued on? Or is it noise that, oh, this is temporary? There's nothing wrong. That's not going to continue happening. Raise your hand if that's a signal. Raise your hand if that's noise. Okay, a little bit more signal than noise. Any brave signals that want to share their signal perspective?
I think part of it is that childcare in particular disproportionately falls on the responsibility of women, and that I'm seeing colleagues who experience that and feel like their lack of participation in the workforce is actually a signal to us all that there's like no system in place to affordably raise kids. As a parent myself of 3 kids, this is a very real thing, and I think in this time of disruption that we'll continue to see things like this happen if people don't take into account like the human cost of the things that we're talking about.
Thank you.
To add to that, actually, there is another thing that I was chatting about this topic with a panel of women, and there is a research that women tend to tinker less than men. So all this like AI, innovation that we're going through, you need to spend a lot of time to actually get your hands dirty. And as to your point too, like, as a parent, women tend to like get their hands a little bit more busier than men. So that could be a reason why I feel like that could be a signal and not, what was the other one?
Noise.
Noise.
Temporary
Yes.
noise.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Noise perspective.
I'm sort of cheating because I think I raised my hand for noise because I'm not convinced it's signal. I think we have a moment to really influence whether or not AI leaves out these women who've left the workforce, to the question posed earlier. When I think about the kind of unpaid, unrecognized labor that happens in the household, half of that is real world physical, half of that is digital, right? When I think about the women who do have to manage the logistics of, I call that complex program management of how do you run a household? And why wouldn't agentic AI be working for them? And so I'm encouraged by, I wouldn't say a ton of folks out there, but people and companies that are working on consumer or prosumer applications of agentic AI. I think we're going to make, hopefully in the next, say, 5-10 years, huge leaps in helping almost in that customer success, customer adoption way, the average person understand how to build an agent that helps them run their lives. One thing I will say is I did have the opportunity to hear from a woman who was very high up at one of the fashion houses in Europe. And the conversation was, how are you so successful in business and have a family and look so good and like reach your health goals? And she really talked about this concept of having a pit crew. And for her, the pit crew were mostly humans at the time, paid to watch her kids, help run her household, et cetera. And so if this movement of AI doesn't allow many of these women who've left the workforce to have their own pit crew in a way that is affordable, scalable, and ultimately does give them back a significant amount of time that we don't actually see them lose, then I think we as a society will really have missed out on an opportunity.
Please, yeah. Vibrant comment in the front.
Thank you so much. Just really quickly, I wanted to point out too that I think there's a lot of great points, but I also think that this is a signal, but beyond just women leaving the workforce, it's the level of unemployment in general across the U.S. And I think it has to do a lot with how the nature of work has changed, and the language of how we describe work, and how the language of how companies describe what they're looking for has fundamentally changed. 1 in 4 Americans who is unemployed has been unemployed for more than 6 months. Application conversion rates in tech are less than 3%. But recruiters are saying that more than 95% of their recruiter pipelines are unqualified, and 88% of hiring managers are saying that they're not finding the most qualified candidates for the role. So it seems like there is a void that's happening between candidates who are looking for work and companies trying to describe what it is that they're looking for. And I think that this is disproportionately affecting certain demographics, because like people of color are also reaching unemployment levels in the job market we haven't seen since the late 2008 timeframe. So, I think this is a larger signal about the state of the workforce in general, and how the state of work hasn't really caught up to the way that we describe it and how people find roles.
Great contribution. Thank you. Panelists, any other comments to add? No? Okay. Last headline. Middle managers are going away. Middle line managers are going away. Signal. This is going to be staying for long term. Signal people? Okay, probably like 75%. Noise people. No, managers have to stay. Okay. Any signal people? Any want to share context of the signal?
I'd add that, a little loud, with the middle managers disappearing, it's a signal as a concern as well, as the prior gentleman was saying, that where are they going to get absorbed into the workforce, especially as they are disappearing? There is a thinking of this is the future state, but there is a lot of, we on the coastal parts of America, the flyover country, we're not really thinking about that. Middle managers are the flyover country. So it's really concerning, because are they expected to dive into the bidding war of the leftover kind of just crumbs that are left over? There's a really big concern of that growing part there. So what's the signal for? I don't know, but it could be really scary, or it could be, an opportunity for some other development that's in there. But yeah, definitely a signal in that regard.
Great, thank you. Middle managers going away is noise. Any noisers? There was a noise over here.
All right, this might be a little bit controversial, but I'd like to offer that it's both a signal and noise. So I'll start with the noise part. So first of all, similar to the comment that was made earlier about the fact that AI is going to take our jobs, I do think that the way that middle manager jobs are run today, like running people groups, is going to shift. So it's not going to look like that in the future. I love the woman who mentioned pit crew. That is such a great concept, right? Because I do think that that's where middle management is going, is that they are project managers over pit crews. How are we going to get a project done? How are we going to move from A to B as an organization, and pulling together the skills that are needed? Maybe it's freelance, maybe it's within an organization, maybe it has to be reskilled or retrained, or maybe it's AI. But I think that's going to be the job of a middle manager, is to triage that and figure that out. And I think actually women are really good at that kind of problem solving and multitasking. So little editorial.
Thank you. Comments from the panel?
Yeah, I do think the job of the middle manager it's in the progress of being redesigned. I think it has to be. And I do think the best middle managers are going to be those that know how to, again, extend your capacity through agents, know which tasks the agents are best at, know where to deploy their most valuable human talent, and have that agility. I mean, I think it's that flexibility, agility, ability to solve the problems that are coming up, because the agents aren't going to be that flexible, quite frankly. It's the people. It's going to be those managers of the pit crew or managers of the small groups or the projects that are going to have to flex to the changes. And so the more people can build that into even just the way they think about work, if work is a basket of tasks, it's, some you're going to toss out some of the snacks and you're going to add some more in, right? And I think we all have to be really flexible in what that's going to be. And the managers who have that agility to do that are going to be the ones that stay. And I think the ones who are more rigid and inflexible are going to have a really hard time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking about the future of like the chief people officer role or the CHRO, chief HR officer role. And a lot of the evolution of that role is actually going to be the chief workforce orchestration officer, where it's the orchestration of human talent and agentic talent that gets work done. And so HR and technology teams merging together is also part of the evolution of workforce management, of like a chief workforce orchestration officer. See woo? Maybe not as sexy. So with that said, I wanted to open it up to one last poll and wanted to gut check. Now, who do you think will decide the future of work? Now, after this discussion, who do you think will decide the future of work? While the votes are coming in, I just wanted to offer the group, are there any, I'd love to open it up to any final questions for the panelists.
Hi, thank you so much for your time. I wanted to make a couple points that then lead to my question. So for context, my background is in the brand world, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about behavior change and how consumers and the general public act and behave and how they make decisions. And one thing that my career has really taught me is that as humans, we're wired toward convenience. And so as we think about, we want things that are quick, cheap, easy, even if they are not necessarily the best for us in the long term. And where I'm going with this is because as we were thinking about truly the future, our kids in the education space and the conversation, Lonnie, that you were bringing up around, yes, critical thinking being a core component of how we need to prepare the next generation, but also how we need to continue to help them to think through solving the problems. Currently today, what I want to make sure that we think about in the world of AI is how we're not just optimizing for convenience and we're not just optimizing for what's quick and easy, because as much as we want our children to be able to think through problems, the optionality of it being convenient is where they are going to lean into. And that is a responsibility that I think we have as adults in this current conversation as we're trying to figure out the world, to make sure that we're preparing our next generation. The second thing that I wanted, which is leading to the question, is I'd love your thoughts on the impact to leadership. We've talked a lot about AI in the current context for the future of work, but it feels a little bit more tactical to me. We're talking about core systems and operations and project management, which is also very important. But I'm interested in understanding how we're preparing the future generation to be better leaders. Because leadership is, yes, a component of understanding the work that your team has to do, the intricacies of that work, but it's also very much in tune with communication and thinking through
empathetically how you, the interpersonal skills that are required to really motivate your workforce. And I wonder the role of AI, I'd love your guys' perspective on this, the role of AI today and where we would love to take it to ensure that we are helping our future generation grow those skills. Because there's a lot of books out there, especially with the anxious generation and a lot of other books, where those social skills are may not necessarily being expanded upon as much. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Sorry, long question, but figured I'd ask.
I have a couple maybe disparate responses. So one, we talk a lot about beneficial friction in that space of like the pain of sitting with a blank piece of paper and what that does. And you can build that into your classrooms. And some of it is by, I see teachers and professors all the time taking blue books back into the classroom, right? So thinking about like what is done in class versus what is done outside of the class and sort of flipping that order. And then also having assignments that focus on showing the work of you doing the thinking process itself. So forcing that beneficial friction. And I will say that for myself, I never start with a blank page anymore. And I'm like, I'm a grown-ass adult, so like at least I have a whole lifetime of having been through that before, but I worry that my own skills are atrophying because I don't start with a blank page anymore. So I think some of it is like the schools have, teachers themselves need education and training, and in schools we need to help kind of rethink some of that, how we do it. Another concept that I hear a lot in this academic area is, and this is also not new, but project-based learning. And so like interdisciplinary project-based things, like so you have people kind of working across disciplines in groups, that forces some of that leadership, some of that communication, and maybe one of the ways to continue to foster that skill set. The last thing, and this is sort of an aside, but one of the trends that I've seen over and over is that all of us that are like, in tech and thinking about these things and people that have the means to send their kids to schools that are outside of the public school system, they are not leaning into more technology. They are leaning into less technology, right? And so when I talk with policymakers about what I see is sort of on the forefront of leading, I actually am worried about too much AI in classrooms in under-resourced schools rather than that's the way that's gonna go. We still see in the more privileged and affluent communities, humans that are helping. And maybe there will be pieces of the teaching experience that we'll now offload to AI so that teacher can focus more on a certain part of teaching, but more humans in the places where they are able to do it, and far more technology in those other areas.
What I would add to Lonnie's response is also this distress tolerance. And there's no substitution for human-to-human connection. And that is where AI should not be. AI can help to encourage, foster, nudge, create the space for it, make that experience to connect with others more frictionless. But the actual experience of that 8th grade socially awkward moment, you have to go talk to someone you like, and you're like, oh, this is so cringe, and you have to go through that. That there is no substitution for that dissonance. There's no substitution for that discomfort. And so we as a society also allowing for distress, allowing for good anxiety, allowing for emotional situations with other humans that don't feel good, because that is the beauty and the messy part of humanity that AI and its sycophantic processes removes from the beauty of being able to connect with other humans. So really resetting the expectations of what a human-to-human connection is really critical when we think about building AI that's intended to foster and grow human connection, not to replace it. So don't make me get on my sandbox about AI companions and that stuff.
That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
Definitely a whole other conversation. I think the role of the leader is changed dramatically just in the last 5 years. What is happening in the workplace is so different, and what we all bring every day to the workplace as leaders, what we have to navigate is never been more complicated. And I think there is a lot going on, and we need to spend time investing in leadership. In my last role, I led leadership development for the organization, and the curriculum we had in 2025 was very different than the one we had in 2019. And a lot of what we did, to your point of this human-to-human connection, was scenario building. We had people actually practicing conversations. How do you actually resolve conflict? How do you have an empathetic conversation? How do you gain perspective outside of your own? We started doing mentoring of some of our early in career folks with very, very senior C-suite leaders because they just didn't have perspective. They were so disconnected in so many ways of the complexities of what it was like to be young. It was very different than when they grew up. And so trying to just share those experiences and create those spaces where you can have those conversations, I think is extraordinarily powerful and important. But funny story on the story of AI coaches and things is we also did a few experiments where we found people were so much more honest with AI coaches, and they wanted to talk to them about things that they, at the end of the survey, they said, I would not have talked to my manager about this, or I would not have talked to a human coach hired by the company about this. But the fact that it was anonymized information, I don't care if the system knows this is what I said, as long as my manager doesn't know what I said. But I need a place to go talk to. And so for any of you that are building those kinds of tools, I mean, it was a wake-up call of, oh my gosh, we need to be so diligent and so thoughtful about just the guardrails and all the things that go into those types of tools, because I do think people desperately want them and need them and feel safe in some cases with them more than even other humans. And we just have to be responsible about how they're built and put out into the world.
Definitely. There was actually a study done by the Rhythm Project about the unfortunate cases where, unfortunately, like connecting with these coaches or companions ended in tragedy with a death. And it's there's different patterns of pro-social frameworks that can avoid those types of things. So there are frameworks that are out there to design effectively for pro-social behaviors rather than detrimental harm, unintended consequences. So I think we have time for maybe one other question from the audience. In the blue? In the blue right here.
Thanks. There's one topic that I thought for sure would come up that hasn't come up, so maybe I'll just bring it up, which is corporate learning and development, like internal learning and development. The workforce has always been changing, right? But usually, and in the past, it's been, oh, we'll change our hiring practices, we'll change what skills we bring into the company, there'll be internal churn, people will leave, people will retire, some people will get downsized. That's always like a long-term strategy in terms of steering a company. But you can't do that when things are changing year to year, month to month, week to week, right? So yes, we can talk about how education is changing, and that as someone that works in education, that's a huge topic. But you can't now say, okay, I've got a 4-year period to do a degree. What am I going to study that is going to be the thing that employees look for? So I feel like one discussion that we're not having, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, which is that the companies themselves need to take over that role. And not just in terms of AI literacy, which I think is very important and lacking in a lot of companies, but just skilling and saying, hey, we're hiring you for who you are and as a person, not necessarily just what's on your resume and then we'll fire you and hire somebody else, right? That's not sustainable. So curious what your thoughts are on companies taking over that role.
I mean, I think reskilling is one of the most imperatives that every company has an obligation to do. I feel very strongly like that. And it's human skills, it's business skills, and it is some technical skills. But I don't think companies should stop focusing on all three, because to all the conversation we've had today, it is important. And, some give things like education reimbursement, but I mean, we had sort of this epiphany in the company of, we were not going to find the talent we wanted outside of the company. The people inside the company already knew our culture, already knew our customers, already knew our products. We needed to help with some of the adjacencies. We needed to help with some of the learning. But I completely agree with you. I do think it's an obligation of companies. I don't know if all will do it.
That's sort of where I sit, which is like 100% believe it to be an obligation and a really serious need. unfortunately, I don't see the behaviors of companies actually investing in that way. There's a lot of short-term behavior. And we all see it. We know, like, that seems dumb. You're going to get rid of these people. You're going to hire somebody else. They're going to churn. Like, but that, let's look at the CFO, how the CFO is managing, the P&L, and like what we don't see that. So when I think about that, I'm like, okay, we don't see that behavior, especially not maybe in the tech startup ecosystem. We have to think about like a different systems level approach, and that's where we haven't talked about policy here, but like one of the ways that government can be helpful is to think about that. Like, how do we incentivize that behavior? Yep. We have tax credit for other types of investment in like physical equipment. Why aren't we giving tax credits for investment in people, right? So like there are like very specific surgical policy things that could help. Absent that, we see such short-term behavior by corporate actors that it seems unlikely to me that we'll see that at scale.
I'm curious, Fatima, from your experience, going through your education today, what's been your messaging as far as the criticality of these human skills and your learning?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel like just the pure reliance on AI has led to people, especially studying engineering and computer science, just like lacking that really critical thinking skills that they need in order to get these jobs. And like someone in the audience said, how there's a void between these employers who are actually looking for people to employ, and then on the flip side, you have all these new grads or undergrads who are looking for internships and are applying to 100, 200, 300 internships and maybe making like a few first round interviews because they don't have those soft skills that they may need, or they don't have the technical skills they may need. So a lot of students especially have one set of really good skills and are lacking in the other. And I think the rise of that is more like more students are having those sort of technical skills but are lacking in that soft skills, because AI can only really help you build that sort of technical skills and help you bypass technical interviews. But when it's like, okay, tell me more about yourself, or like, how would you navigate this XYZ situation where you have a conflict with a coworker? It's like, okay, well, I can't have AI answer this for me anymore, because it's like now I have to use my own critical thinking and my own judgment in order to solve these issues. And that's where a lot of students kind of lack that sort of thinking in order to be able to navigate these situations appropriately.
Yeah, what I would close also from an L&D perspective is it's the competition for the employee time. It's like, go learn AI. Oh, then also learn human skills and also do your day job. Oh, do it with less work and less people, or you have less people on your team. And so it's like even more tension on the existing workforce that was already burnt out, that was already only 30% of them are actually engaged. And so it's the attention of time that's even growing smaller and smaller and smaller. So that ROI of why should I invest time on these human skills when my boss doesn't seem to encourage me to do that? They'd encourage me to do these AI tools instead. So I'm going to pick what gets me compensated. So until we have compensation that actually rewards being good humans to other humans at companies, I think we will still see these dissonances in systems and what we want to reward behaviors for. Okay, well, I just wanted to give a huge shout out and thank you. So if you could join me in thanking our panelists for being here today. Thank you so much for your time.